Thank you, Marina, for that very, very kind introduction. And I should say that the best Italian meals were always at her house, as a matter of fact. So we had a really great party and dinners there. And I think many of you actually were there one time or another. I also like to really thank Shoba for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to come back to this place where I spent the most part of my life, as a matter of fact, and to see so many familiar faces, friends, even former students, and so on. So I really wasn't sure what I was going to do today, I confess. And so what I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about sort of my personal story and how WISE has impacted my own career and path here at Syracuse University, as well as that of so many women and faculty, I think, during the time I was here. And I hope you will see that through my talk. So my husband and I joined Syracuse University in 1987. At that time, there were no other women faculty in the physics department, and just a handful of women in the faculty, on the faculty in science and engineering at Syracuse University. I could literally count them on one hand. Shoba has already mentioned, I moved that. Shoba has already mentioned Marilyn Kerr, who was here. I believe she joined the faculty in 1970, and I think that was the time the Department of Biology was actually named Department of Biology. Shoba and Shoba Bhatia and Catherine Newton had joined in the early 1980s. Karen Ahmai and Norma Schleplik, that Shoba also mentioned, joined, I believe, in 1986, just before me. And as far as I know, and again, my facts are not accurate, but that was about it. No department had a critical mass. In fact, generally, at most, was one of us in each department, and there were really no mechanisms for us to get together and get to know each other. I was far too busy with my work to really meet other women. To her credit, Catherine Newton reached out early on, and we had many fun lunches together. And that is, by the way, one place where WISE really made a big difference later on. But at the same time, Syracuse University was ahead of its days in a couple of important ways. First of all, they were willing to hire couples. Not many universities did that at that time. Many places had in place anti-nepotism rules, and they would not hire a couple, certainly not one in the same department. And Syracuse was willing to do this. In fact, Syracuse actually understood early on that by hiring a couple, it's actually a great deal for a university. You get two excellent people, and they have a strong incentive to stay, or to stay for a long time. So that was really a good deal. The other thing, though at that time there were no parental leaves or other accommodations where really everything like that was unheard of, Syracuse had already in place a rather important family-friendly structure with perhaps difficult hours, but still much better than nothing, which was the Syracuse University Daycare Center. And that actually became very clear to me early on, because a few months, in fact 2 months after joining the faculty here, I became pregnant. And at the end of my first year, I had my first child, and I had the opportunity to start taking advantage of the daycare center, which, of course, was only one element in making life for my husband and I a little easier. But the most important thing is that it provided us for a conduit for meeting other women, other faculty couples with children. And in fact, it's through the daycare center that more than 30 years ago, I met Shoba and Tej. And our families had a lot of fun together, in addition to professional relationship, including a great trip to Taj Mahal, I think around 2005. I'm not sure the year is right or not. I had many supportive colleagues in my department. Many of them were really great, but I have to say I did experience my share of comments that did not make feel like I belonged, and certainly did not boost my confidence. And I would like to recount one episode for you. I was sitting at my desk, engrossed in a calculation with pen and paper, sort of like in that picture up there, as a matter of fact. And somebody knocks at the door, and I said, come in. And so this person opens the door and makes a big act of looking around this rather small room, as a matter of fact, and says, "Where is the professor?" I have to confess that I wasn't sufficient. I didn't come up with any witty statement in remark. I just mumbled something about me being the professor. And then we established he was looking for a colleague, and he went on and so on. But certainly that, again, didn't help me my confidence. But the thing that made me a little sad is that as I was preparing the talk and thinking back about this episode, I decided to Google on Google Images, cartoon of a professor. And I have to say, I came up with pages and pages looking like this, even today. Although, there is one right there that kind of looks like me, or Marina. Marina and I were always confused. Marina, Cristina, two Italian women, short hair, glasses, you know. So I guess that is good. But I kept scrolling down, by the way, pages and pages, and I gave up before I could find a cartoon of a professor of color. So that's still the situation. Anyway, that's, but let's move on to whys. So as Shobha mentioned in her beautiful recount of the history here, WISE was started in 1999, the brainchild of Catherine Newton and Shobha Bhatia. A few of us, Marina, me, others, tagged along in the early days, but it was really the two of them who kept it alive. And for 7 or 8 years, it was run with essentially zero funding, and despite of it, it spearheaded many great activities that some of which Shobha recounted. But most important, it was that it served for us, women in science, faculty. It was the way we got to finally meet each other and really start sharing experiences, successes, and failures, and establish a community. Towards the end of 2000, maybe 2008, 2007, 2008, finally, we organized ourselves and felt ready to go to the administration and actually ask for some real funding. And I remember we had this meeting in the office of then Provost Eric Spina. I think several of you were there. It was quite a few of us went there. He had a big table, but he had to go find a few more chairs, and was a little taken aback by how many of us were there. And I think we left the room with maybe $1 million funding promised. So this was really the start of WISE as a program capable to actually invest some money and push forward a number of programs. And in particular, what happened after that, as Shobha mentioned, is that Shobha and Karin Ruland essentially submitted the WISE proposal, the advanced proposal that was funded, and ran a number of programs that really started changing things at Syracuse in a dramatic way. Now, the advanced program ended, but I think I was really happy to see that right now there is now an Office of Faculty Affairs that actually does run a lot of program for leadership training and so on, all together, they go together with the activities of WISE. I can't really see what I'm doing there, so bear with me. Now, overall, WISE has helped enormously in recruiting and retaining women at SU, as you can see from this plot. Many departments have grown, not all equally, but for instance, biology has done remarkably well. I'm sure Marilyn Kerr would be proud if she could see that today. I think they've reached, Kate tells me they've reached 50% now, which is really, really remarkable. One of the things that I think helped enormously, especially in recruiting, was the WISE made a point of organizing a meeting or often lunches with every woman who would come to interview for faculty position on campus. I took part in some of these luncheons, and I know for a fact that they were very helpful in recruiting women, because these women realized that they would find here a really inclusive and supportive environment, not just for themselves, but also for their future students and postdocs, and that really made a difference in our ability to attract them on campus. And of course, after recruitment, there was retention, and I think that WISE made a difference in a couple of important ways. First of all, as I already said, it helped changing the climate into really an inclusive one, facilitating networking and building a community. And secondly, working together with the administration, it really engendered a number of changes in the structure, better mechanisms for accommodation of dual career couples, parental leave, elder care, and so on. So a number of family-friendly policies that can still use improvement, but were certainly a big improvement as compared to when I started 30 years ago. I would like to say a few words about leadership. There are lots of leaders in this room, young and old, and clearly some soon-to-be leaders, as we just saw at this table. But to me, there is one I would like to highlight, which is Shobha. Shobha has really been the soul of WISE for so many years. She has inspired us all with her measured and effective leadership style. She understands that leadership is not about power, but about leading change and promoting and celebrating the successes of others. And don't be fooled by her calm demeanor. She knows what she wants and she will achieve it, and she told it herself. And I think all provosts and chancellors, past and present at SU, know that, and they've learned this, sometimes to significant cost to their budgets. So our relatively new provost, I gather, has already learned this as well. So we cannot celebrate WISE without celebrating Shobha. On a more personal note, I returned from a sabbatical in France in 2007 and found myself becoming department chair. Now, following a time-honored tradition in academia, I stepped into this role with zero training, absolutely no idea what I was supposed to do. I was very lucky that I have at least a great advisor in my department, my colleague Eric Schiff, who had been chair before me, and I could go to him many times a day, basically trying to figure out what I was going to do, as well as a few others. But also very important and invaluable was to be able to reach out to the WISE women to share both successes and failure and see what to do next. The WISE program has run many programs having to do with leadership and so on, but one thing that I particularly remember in the context of certain lectures that they were organizing was when perhaps in 2015 or so, I think it was Catherine Newton that invited here to speak Marcia McNutt. Marcia McNutt was a geologist, she still is. At that time was editor-in-chief of Science magazine and president-elect of the National Academy of Science. She is still today president of the National Academy of Sciences. And I got the opportunity to briefly talk to her, and what really I found inspiring was the fact that she admitted that she had struggled with confidence issues, this imposter syndrome, for many years, and she still did without necessarily admitting it. And that made me feel a little better about myself, because I also had this kind of issue for a long time, and to see this woman really at the top of her career, admitting that was very helpful to me. So finally, I would like to say that, what is that? Did I want this? Did I want that? I want this, I think. I can't see. The last thing I want to say is that I think WISE has also impacted my research. And the reason is that WISE has helped building an inclusive network of faculty, students, and postdocs that brings people together across departments. And this is very important because much of today's research in the sciences, including my own, really transcends disciplinary boundaries and requires diversity of talents, experiences, and approaches. And by facilitating interaction of students and postdocs coming from different areas, I think WISE has really supported an inclusive network that has really changed the way we did research here at Syracuse. And I would like to take a minute to sort of show you that by highlighting actually the kind of research that I do, that I have been doing at least for the last maybe 15, 20 years. So as you heard, I'm a theoretical physicist, and these days I work on something we call active matter. Matter, materials, of course, is a collection of atoms or molecules. They interact with each other, and through these interactions, they organize in various phases, gases, liquids, solids, that have properties very different from that of the individual molecules. Active materials are collections of particles or agents that individually consume energy to generate their own motion. Think of bacteria or humans or living cells of any kind. And such active particles, as we call them, spontaneously organize in sort of large-scale structures that behave like non-equilibrium materials, a fluid that flows without any external applied forces, a solid capable of reconfiguring itself without applying any deformations from the outside. And here are a few examples. These are cells moving together in the development of the embryo of a fruit fly. Down below, you see actually structures inside the cell as they rearrange to drive the cell division, human crowds, or collections of robots, of nanoscale. Well, these are actually pretty large. These are probably microscale robots. Now, one of the perhaps most beautiful examples is actually the murmuration of starlings that you see here, or many other similar type of collective motion that you find in nature. And it is actually precisely this phenomenon that started the field of active matter when physicists decided to try to see if they could actually use physical rules to describe this type of collective behavior. And in fact, the field started in 1995 when basically borrowing from ideas of magnetism. A model was developed to describe a bird as sort of a flying little magnet that interacts with its neighbors and can undergo what we call a phase transition from a state of disordered motion to a state of organized collective motion, a flock, just like the flock of birds. The reason I'm telling you all of this is that I actually want to mention two successes or outcomes of the field where I think really we can say that the work carried out by students and postdocs with wise faculty, not just me, but others as well, here at Syracuse University, has really, the work by these people has really contributed to these two successes. The first one is the development of models of these active materials that have been shown to describe quantitatively the causal relation between the spatial distribution of protein and the flow of cells in the development of an embryo, which is quite remarkable. You use mathematics to describe the development of a real embryo. Now, this collective motion of cells, of course, is important in a number of other biological processes and is one of the topics still very much at the center of the research carried out today by the Syracuse Bio-Inspired Institute. The second is the discovery that while a gas, as you all know, tends to fill a container and the particles of the gas spread out uniformly, a gas of active particles behaves very different. The particles tend to condense even without any attractive interaction or to accumulate on the walls of the container. And this has inspired experimentalists to start thinking about constructing micro machines powered, say, by bacteria, such as this gear, which is rotating because it's in a bath of E. coli. And what this work, I think, was really carried out by people belonging to the WISE community here at Syracuse, or at least partly inspired by work carried out here at Syracuse University. But what is next? Let's see. Okay, I forgot my slide. Okay. And I wanted to just show some of the students and postdocs that over the years have contributed to all of this. What's next? Well, we've certainly come a long way, but clearly not far enough. And the progress until recently has been fairly slow. Here is again the graph of women in the physics department, and it's actually picked up. It's starting to grow most rapidly. But as long as there is somebody in this room that can recognize herself in each one of these dots, I think we're still far from where we should be. And the pipeline is still leaky, but women are certainly much more included in decision-making. Lots of chairs, deans, provosts around here in the room. Sometimes I wonder whether women are too much included in decision-making these days. You get called to be on so many committees, on so many that, I wonder whether maybe we have gone a little bit too far. At the same time, it is certainly important to be in role of leadership, because we have seen, especially, for instance, here through WISE, how by consistently and publicly pay attention to inclusivity, practicing transparency, and so on, one can really transform the culture. And so it is important that women continue to do this. The other thing that gives me really a lot of hope is that when I was a young faculty, we hesitated to ask for breaks or any kind of accommodation, because deep down we felt that it showed that we were not up to the task. Now I can see that precisely thanks to programs like WISE, the young women really don't hesitate to ask for what is due, and do so without apologies. And this really gives me a lot of hope. Of course, balancing career and family remains a challenge, and the recent pandemic has made this even more evident. It has also highlighted that there are still many open questions on which may be the right policies that will further women and minorities in academia, something that maybe WISE can start thinking about and maybe join the national conversation on this topic. Overall, the slope is clearly up, but there is much more work to be done. And so how much further do we need to go? And with that, I would like to leave you with a rather well-known and famous quote by the late RBG. I am sometimes asked when there will be enough women on the Supreme Court, and I say when there are 9. People are shocked, but there have been 9 men, and nobody's ever raised a question about that. And with that, I thank you.